Kathy asked me this morning what I was going to preach on. I said, structure. She goes, but you don't know anything about that. She's right. I don't like rules. Anybody here like rules? Now, some people like rules. That's okay. Some people are really into rules. They like rules, they like to enforce rules. My big brother's like that. He was a cop for years and a preacher. And he thought the two were kind of the same. Just different rules, you know, to enforce. I must admit that as much as I don't like rules, I have to admit that you know, some are necessary. Because I always thought that rules limit my freedom, but actually the opposite of structure is not freedom, it's anarchy. And that's what Moses was facing. These people had been slaves in Egypt. Now, I don't know if you know this, but slaves don't get to make a lot of independent decisions. I don't know if you've heard that or not. Slaves are told what to do every minute of every day. You don't have to make any decisions at all, except to follow or die. You know, it's really a simple decision. Do this. No, I don't want to. You know. So these folks were used to having someone tell them every minute of every day what to do. And now they've left Egypt. They're out in the wilderness alone. And they're lost. I mean, they're not lost geographically. They're lost. They have no idea what to do with themselves. And things are getting crazy. There's all kinds of weird stuff going on. And it's a mess. And Moses is trying to herd them all. And, you know, a couple 100,000 people. And it's crazy. And finally, you know, we got to do something. And God says, okay. Okay, here's some basic structure. Worship me. Don't worship others. Don't say bad words. Take a day of rest. Honor your father, your mother, honor your family. Be good to each other. Don't commit adultery. Don't steal. Don't covet. Treat each other well. Just some basic structure. It's not, you know, every day of every minute of your life. You're still going to have lots of freedom within that to operate, but here's some basic structure so that you don't just annihilate yourselves out there in the wilderness. Just some basics. Now, we realize that there's necessity for that. I love baseball. And I guess, you know, you could get a bunch of guys together and some bats and balls and gloves and just go out in some field and just whatever goes. But it wouldn't be baseball, would it? Nobody knows what it would be. You would just make up the rules as you go. Okay. No rules. Just whatever you want to do. And, you know, that'd probably be fun for 5 minutes or so, and then it would be kind of pointless. Without, you know, the foul lines, and, you know, you got to get the first, and, you know, without the structure, the game wouldn't be any fun. And that's true of any sporting event. It's probably true of most things in life, right? I mean, I know about sports, but, yeah, what would it be like if there were no rules at all for the highway? You go whenever you want to go and go wherever you want to go. It'd be like Europe. You know, it'd be chaos. If we don't have certain structure, then we don't have the liberty to move within that structure. That's a hard lesson for those of us that don't like rules to learn. Is that if there's not some structure, it's a mess. It's kind of that way for countries, too, if you think about it. You know, if we didn't have some kind of structure, we'd be, well, we'd be a mess. Well, maybe we are. No, we're not. You know, without certain things in place, then we wouldn't have the freedom we have. As churches, too, we need a little structure. You know, we sometimes as Methodists, we get a little carried away with it. We love committees, and we have committees for everything. Changing the water in the thing, it takes a committee sometimes, not quite, but you know, we organize because we know that little bit of structure gives us the freedom to do the things that we're given to do. Sometimes our structure gets in the way, and we have to figure out ways to make that work better so that it doesn't prevent us from doing things. And usually those are money related. You know, we need permission to spend money, and sometimes that prevents us from reacting very quickly unless we budget ahead for those things, and then we have those contingencies taken care of. So it depends on how the structure is set up. It allows us as a church to do the ministries that we do because we have things in place like mission committees and worship committees and administrative councils and folks that take care of things like this. It gives us the freedom to express ourselves because we have a structure within which to work. As we get ready for General Conference in April, there's going to be a lot of talk about structure. We have a structure in the United Methodist Church that was created in the heydays of the 60s and 70s, and it's becoming burdensome at some levels. And so there are proposals to kind of combine things and put things together in the general agencies and boards to make that more efficient and to create a better structure to give us the freedom to go forward. Because if we're bogged down by unnecessary expenses, then we don't have the freedom to do the things we need to do as a denomination. Structure is not finite. Structure changes as the needs change. Now, the Ten Commandments haven't changed. Not that I've checked. Were they still, even in the message, they were still pretty much the same. But you will remember that there was this guy a couple thousand years ago named Jesus. And he said, really you can sum it all up and just love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, and mind, and strength, and love your neighbor as yourself. So maybe as Christians we have even less structure. Two. As individuals, we need that structure too. And I hate to admit that. Because I'm not that crazy about structure. I don't know if you've heard that yet. But I'm not. But I realize that without certain guidelines, without something that I know is real and true, that, life gets crazy and scary and frightening and horrible at times when I don't stay within the structures that God gives me. When I don't stay within the structures of human living. We've all been there from time to time when we push the envelope just a little too far maybe and get ourselves in trouble. I don't know about you, but I've done that sometimes in my life. I haven't done it lately, thankfully. But for the grace of God, we all go. Because we're all capable of really doing some really dumb things from time to time. They're only dumb when we look at them in retrospect. They never seem dumb at the time. You know, Jesus called us sheep. I never liked that, but it's right, but it's accurate. Sheep are dumb. You know anything about sheep? Sheep will, if there's green grass, sheep walk like this. You ever walk like that? You bump into things when you do that, by the way. The sheep will follow green grass off a cliff. Well, almost. They'll follow until they get lost and they don't know where anybody else is because they're following the green grass. The other thing sheep will do is if they got a bunch of other sheep around them, they'll stay right with them no matter where they go. You jump off a bridge if your friends did it. Anybody ever say that? Sometimes we're not real bright. Because we go with the flow or we go with the crowd, we put our blinders on and we walk blindly into bad situations. Sometimes sometimes our hearts betray us, we get really excited about this group or that person or these friends, and we think we're just being great and loyal, and all they wanted was somebody else to use for something, this and that. Sometimes we're not real bright about who we associate with, and that's why we need structure. And I hate to admit that because I don't want structure, but we need it. We need it so that we can operate in the freedom God gave us. As people, the only way we can be who God created us to be is to live within the structure that God gives us. Does that make sense? The only way that we can be the people God created us to be is to live within the structures that God gives us. If we live within those structures, then we have great freedom to express ourselves in many different ways. As individuals, as church, as a denomination, as a country. And as much as I don't like rules, I hate to admit it, but we need them. Not too many. Because too many is not structure, too many is control. And that's a different thing. That's back to where they were in Egypt. And sometimes as humans, that's where we want to go. You would not believe this, but some people prefer to be part of an organization that tells them what to do every minute of every day. In fact, churches that are like that are growing like crazy. Does that make sense? Does anybody want somebody to tell them what to do every minute of every day? But those churches are growing. So somebody wants that. Maybe because this is such a crazy world to live in that they want more structure and more structure until it becomes so structured that they don't have to make any decisions. They don't have to worry about if I should do this or not do this, or what about if I do this, because everything is prescribed and laid out. And if that's the kind of life you want, well, this is probably not the place for it, because we're willing to ask some questions and to put some envelopes in to allow ourselves some freedom to make decisions about how we live out our life in Christ. But we will have a little structure, if that's okay. So that we can be the people God made us to be.